You talked about generational inertia, or at least kind of implied it before, and I wanted to ask you about that because so many people who serve come from families who served. But I was surprised to learn that that's not you. You didn't know the difference between the Army and the Marines when you enlisted. What what happened to you?
You know what it was, Mike? It was just naked patriotism. It really was. My parents were small town, hardworking people, salt of the earth, blue collar, conservative, but not political at all. Conservative by nature and patriotic. And we went to church on Sunday. And then every 4th of July and Memorial Day weekend, we would go to my parents' small town in southern Minnesota. It was a farming town, and we'd go to the Memorial Day parade. And it was a blink and you miss it kind of moment. It was, the fire truck, the one sheriff's car, the high school band, and the dozen vets from the county walking down the street, and that was the parade. But just watching the town stand up and given a standing ovation and the reverence that they had, and then watching this, of course, it's Memorial Day, so you go down to Memorial Day Park and you reflect on the men that are not there because they gave their life.
Not Veterans Day.
Not Veterans Day. This is Memorial Day is the one that really sticks with me. And I wasn't adding it up then, but it's for the visual now. You add up every one in Mingo, Minnesota together, and you start to get a sense of the depth of the service and the sacrifice that required protecting the freedom that we have. But for my small 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old mind, I just thought, man, these guys did something special. Like, what did they do? That seems important. And maybe when I'm older, I could do that. I think I should. You do that and then throw in, I can't even name what it was, but throw in a military movie or two. And pretty soon it's like, yeah, I want to do that. I got into West Point and Princeton. And you know why I chose Princeton? Because they had a better basketball team. And that's all I cared about. And I wanted to play basketball in college.
How'd that work out, Pete?
I sat the bench for 4 years, but it was great. But the nice part is I knew that Princeton had an ROTC program. And I didn't know if it was Army or Navy or whatever, but I just said, hey, if I want to serve, I can. So that's why I'm a big believer in civic ritual. I'm a big believer in parades and events and ceremonies. And we try to take our kids. We did it this year. We'll do it every year. What we celebrate, what we honor is a reflection of what we value. What do we spend our time cheering for, clapping about, recognize, talking about? That tells our kids what we care about. And my parents just doing that simple duty year after year is what kind of stacked in my brain. Hey, you should do this. And then I did, and kind of the rest is history. But our country for years had been pretty good at doing that, taking young Petes who don't have any of that background and saying, hey, be all that you can be, or, few the proud, that's what I want to be. And they did it. And we're losing that. And that's why we've got some of the recruiting challenges we have.
Back to parades.
Yeah.
These things, these civic expressions that you mentioned, talk more about that. And what happens if we forget why we stand, if we forget why we sing along with the national anthem, when we forget why we put our hand over our heart, or why we salute, or why we stand when a woman enters the room, or any of the other little social lubricants that kind of keep us from tearing each other's throats out. Why is it important?
You said it so, the way you said it beautifully. It's important because if we don't do it, we lose it. Just like I think of even the old farmhouse on my property, just about 5 acres from here. That used to be the center of action 100 years ago. That was where everybody. Now we can barely find it, and we have no idea where it was. That's just 100 years. That's 2.5 generations, and that's an example of land. But the same goes with our own civic traditions and our own institutions and our own beliefs and our own patriotism. It has to be, Reagan said it, it's the line we all know, but freedom is never one generation away from extinction. You don't pass it to the next generation in the bloodstream. It has to be fought for and passed along. That is exactly right. Like, what we did is we gave away, in exchange for leisure, in exchange for convenience, in exchange for technology, in exchange for paying more we gave away the basics. We gave away strong core families, fathers and mothers, men and women. We gave away standing when women entered the room, or saluting the flag, standing for the anthem, teaching kids about our founding generation, the brilliance of what a republic is. And we've counted on our government schools, our public schools to do that. They used to do that kind of. Now we're lucky if our school says the Pledge of Allegiance. If you're in a good school if your school says the Pledge of Allegiance, and if the kids actually stand, then you're really in a good school. Think about how far we've come in 100 years, where that was something kids did with reverence.
And we're so disconnected from the military itself.
Big time.
We don't have any skin in the game. And I'm not saying, oh boy, World War II, that must have been great. When gas was rationed and sugar was impossible to find and rubber and blah, 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 blah. But at least everybody knew there was a home front and it was a united effort. Now it just seems so strategic, almost like a chess piece.
For sure. I mean, and politicians don't have any stake in it. So, up or down doesn't affect their lives one way or another, other than how politically popular the war is. And I blame Republicans for that too. I mean, George Bush said, let's win the war and go shopping. The best thing you do is go shopping. It's sort of, I understand that mindset, but we never really galvanized people in a way that connected them to the conflicts in a meaningful way. And there will be another conflict. And that's kind of the scary part of the next level of the conversation, playing it forward is, okay, Mike, we did 9/11 on the backs of, decades. Even if our public schools weren't perfect, they were still mostly patriotic. And so we had this immediate response to, hey, let's do something. And then we can have the conversation about if what we did was right and everything. If there's the border's wide open and some sleeper cell from Iran or wherever else commits some terrible October 7th type attack inside our own country, are we immediately divided? Is there a large portion of our country that says, well, we kind of deserved it? That's a scary thought if you play that forward. It was a universal, who's this bin Laden guy? Let's go kill him after 9/11. It was that sense. And I don't know that we muster, regardless of what the blame is, who's this guy? Let's deal with this. Let's address this. And not that everything we did after 9/11 was right? Maybe we'd have to restrain that impulse and not get pulled into something bigger that we spend billions and trillions on. That's a whole nother conversation. But back to patriotism. Patriotism is pretty important when you're asking young men to wear a uniform and go die for a country. And we're missing recruiting goals because the military basically pulled a Bud Light and decided to sort of try to cater to non-traditional constituencies. And in the meantime, they offended all the boys from Oklahoma and Kansas and Texas who normally join the military. And they're like, well, I don't want to do that. If I want to do that, I could go to the local university. And so it can be turned around inside the military, and it has to be, because you can't move away from this problem. You can't, move to a different school or a different tax rate. This is our only deal.
If you like what you heard,
and even if you don't,
won't you please,
pretty please subscribe? Well, I hate to beg and I hate to plead, but please, pretty freak